I teach these through my books and through my workshops and through my client load with the teams I work with all over the place, all over the nation. I teach them this wonderful connection to the spiritual aspect of their sport. And then I show them the relationship of the spirituality to their life. And what's interesting is this is what we're craving. And you can find that through religion as well. And so there are many, many gateways that can open.
Yeah, and you brought up spirituality and religion, and it's the same thing that through a church, there's a formal structure like a team that when it's connected to the spirituality part of it, it's an amazing thing. But once it gets caught on, again, less spiritual, more materialistic, and we see those in the headlines too, just like any team, any company, any school, any family, it does anything but achieve, get people what they were really craving. It gives them what they thought they wanted to hold on to. And as one of my earlier guests, Dr. Rick Jarrow, who is very much spent a lot of time studying in India, but was an avid basketball player as a kid, we talked on the show, and he said, sports is how we bring kids into society. And in fact, I tell people in this country, it's soccer, because that's all. I mean, you put a soccer ball in front of a kid. My kids don't play soccer, but at some point they all did. And even I didn't play soccer as a kid, but at some point I was kicking a ball, and that is how you bring them together, and they begin to, find out what competing is, the value of the opponent.
Yeah, and I mean, it even translates into things like something as simple as cooperation, working together. Boy, if you look at the world the way it is now, particularly this country, and I don't want to go political on you, but right. Seriously, in this country right now, these spiritual virtues are hard to come by. Integrity, wow, trust, honesty, respect.
Well, and that's because winning is getting the better of someone. That means, a good business deal means you got the best of someone. To win means you defeated them, as in you caused them harm. When, the easiest one I would, bring to anybody, which is, okay, take the two best people there are in any sport, anything, and have them go head to head. Is one of them really going to be a loser at the end? I'm like, no, that's stupid. I said, okay, but that's how we go. I mean, I tend to go with the extremes, like say, okay, let's just take it all the way. I go, but we just somehow rationalize it back towards, those guys lost. They, I bet they're going to go home and feel pretty bad. I'm like, why?
Yeah,
if
that goes back. That goes back to a strange statement. You probably have heard this, Dave, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners have too. Is in the Olympic Games, you don't win silver, you lose gold, right?
Yeah.
And in the entire world, you win a silver medal, you're the second person on that chart at that moment, at that given time. Because tomorrow, by the way, you might not be there, But at that moment, you got silver. But to disparage it by saying you didn't win silver, you lost gold. And, when you look at the the amazing winning organizations, like, okay, so the Seattle Seahawks in pro football with Pete Carroll, very spiritual oriented, very much in tune with these concepts that we're talking about today. How about the Golden State Warriors with Steve Kerr? And I've been very fortunate to have Steve in my life, and I think he feels the same way about me in his life. But that organization, he talks all the time about spirituality. He's talking about, like, their top values are, the first one is joy, and the second one is selflessness, and then there's competitiveness. And you know what? The fourth one is compassion. And another friend of mine, Phil Jackson, who coached the Lakers and the Bulls, he was the one who said, without compassion, we would never have won those championships in Chicago. Imagine.
Yeah, those egos can't exist on a court together.
No way. Dennis Rodman with Michael Jordan? No way.
Yeah, and that's what I tell people being from Chicago. I mean, we talk about Kerr and those things. Like, when you used to see Kerr on the court, there was something very different about him, not just because he had red hair, and shooting from far away, but he carried himself differently. And now being like with Positive Coaching Alliance, he's one of their advisors, and it never surprises me whenever I do the training or see that he's there when I think back to him on the court, because there was something about him. Never met the guy, never saw an interview, but it was just obvious the way he carried himself out there. You talk about that influence. He clearly was influencing people just watching on the screen without actually communicating. It's pretty amazing stuff what sports can do, and the sports comes to an end for everybody, at some point, including at the end of every day when you have to go home. And that's the thing that I really like that you've been coming back to, which is it's winning the day at home, whether it's winning the day in the office and all those things. That's why, sports is so important to me, because I know what it did for my dad. I know what it did for him in raising a family and starting his own business, and what it's done for me to get through college to, as you pointed out, figure out how to raise 4 daughters with my wife, not knowing a thing about that. I've almost got it figured out on the 4th one. The first one, my oldest daughter knows I made all the mistakes with her, so we're
that's the way it is, isn't it? Yeah.
But that's what we get out of sports.
You made 5,000 mistakes with that first daughter, and now you've only made 50.
Yeah.
With your 4th, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, down to 50. That's that they tell me about.
You mentioned Positive Coaching Alliance. Again, it's something that your listeners should kind of look into if they don't already or know about it. But the founder of that is a dear friend of mine as well, Jim Thompson. And Jim actually taught a class at Stanford. And the reason why I bring this up is he taught a class at Stanford, and he invited me in as a guest speaker for an entire day, because the class went 6 hours each Saturday. And the name of that course, if I'm remembering it correctly, was The Spirituality of Sport.
Yeah.
And he knew I was using these concepts and this terminology in my work, so he had me come in and do my thing. And so Jim goes out and he starts, the Positive Coaching Alliance, which endorses and preaches I don't know if preach is the right word. I don't particularly like that word, but I guess I can use it. But he helps people, young people and coaches, to understand what it means to coach with heart. That's the spiritual. In fact, one of my books is called Coaching with Heart. And
I got it right here.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, I've got both of them in front of me.
I'm still promising myself I'm going to read it. Well, what's funny is when you write a book, I don't know if you've had this experience, Dave, but when you write a book, you're so involved in it day in and day out, and you never quite read the whole thing. And then all of a sudden it's done. And you don't want to go near it for about 3 or 4 months, because you've been bathing your nervous system in it for days and weeks and months, and even in some cases a couple of years. And so I don't know if I've ever read a book of mine cover to cover, but I definitely use them and I refer to them piece by piece. And Coaching with Heart has been a wonderful book for me, and helping me in my parenting and helping me in my coaching as well. But yeah, so Jim has done some great work, and yeah, I like your orientation. I really, I didn't know what this this conversation would be like, because we hadn't met each other, but I'm very smitten with where we've gone with this whole conversation.
Yeah, and I stumbled under this format. It's called I find people that I like what they say and what they write, and decide that I'm a talker. and we can pretty much burn through an hour. It's very scientific, and it's this is the 28th episode. And by the way, PCA was my first guest because it was PCA, 10 years ago when my second daughter, we decided she had to get off the couch. And she was the most belligerent soccer player I've ever seen. Refused to play, but we got her to do lacrosse, and it was a group that said, and we do PCA. And it immediately, at that time, probably had all 4 kids, but, you're getting into the real business world. You're 10, 15 years out of college, and you start to get a little jaded about, well, wait a minute, I thought we're doing this to do it right, and things like that. And you start to lose the fun. But it was actually PCA that said, this is how I was taught to play. This is how I was taught on the job early to work. And so, and it's no coincidence that, this circle of how we're all connected. I do want to, we've got a few minutes left, but I want to tell people about your books. When you mentioned you can open them and you don't actually have to read any of Dr. Lynch's books cover to cover. I can open these books, and I haven't read them cover to cover. I open them, and I just see what's on the page. They are written in ways that are very simple and striking passages. At the end, he has bullet points of just things to remember. It is honestly a book where if you just, every day, just randomly, Russian roulette reading, just open it up, you're going to get something out of it. It's better than I think this is probably what you call, before Twitter, this is how you open it, and suddenly you'd find 140 characters of something meaningful to carry on your day. So I really want to compliment you on that. They're done very well.
Thank you so much.
And what I also want to do is let people know, you've been doing this for decades now, but you are trying some new things, some things with Steve Kerr, and some things with actually a group that's helped me with this show. When I said I need help finding guests, it was Changing the Game with Brent Reed Maltby and John O'Sullivan that said, here's some people you ought to call, and your name was on the list.
Nice.
And but let's tell people a little bit about first how they can find your website, and then let's also tell them about some of the new things you're going to be getting into and that you have actually gotten into already with the Changing the Game project. Yeah,
on the first note, you can go to my website. It's www, of course, .wayofchampions. That's with an S at the end. One word, wayofchampions.com. And it's jam-packed. I just redesigned it, and I just redid the whole thing and added a lot more content. There's a ton of videos, and there's things to listen to, things to watch, things to read. Of the 12 books that I've written, I think I have highlighted and showcased like 6 or 7 of them. Those are my bestsellers, and the ones I think that if you wanted to read a book, those are probably the ones. I have several that are out of print, so obviously I'm not going to put them up there. And I think you'll find it really enjoyable and stimulating, and see what happens. Just give it a shot. And as far as Changing the Game project, John O'Sullivan and I have become pretty close. He's the one who founded Changing the Game project, and I invited him to come together with me because I really felt he was doing good work. And it turns out that he's not only doing good work, but he's a good person, and he's an amazing person, and he's very, very sharp and very talented as a coach, as a presenter. He's got a wonderful TED Talk out there. So he's a lot younger than I am, and I kind of have taken him under my wing and mentoring him. In fact, this past year, he wanted to get into the work I'm doing with teams and team building and culture building. And so I actually gave him one of the teams that I could have taken, that people came to me and said, would you work with us? And I said, no, I can't, because I didn't have the time, and that's true. But I said, I know someone that does, and he's wonderful. And boy, it turned out fantastic. And now John is taking off with that. So that's my connection with John. And then he and I came together and